Okay, today I'm going to show you some simple steps to get through a radiator reinstall on a Camry 2001 through 1997 four-cylinder. The instructions to replace the radiator are already on YouTube, but there were a few items that I thought of interest when I did mine. One, it's pretty difficult to do. I give it a 8 out of 10 for myself, who's inexperienced at doing these. If you're experienced at doing car repairs, probably 6 out of 10. My issue is the antifreeze is so dangerous and it gets to be a mess. Even when I had a tarp down, I still had antifreeze all over the place. But maybe you could do a better job with that. Okay, the parts that I replaced on mine was the radiator, the thermostat, the fan switch in the radiator, the lower hose, and the two transmission hoses on the bottom. I thought I could get away with not replacing the transmission hoses, but when I tried to take them off with pliers, because they were on pretty tight, they pretty much cracked and were useless. And you can't buy those two hoses for the transmission through Discount Autos or AutoZone. I went to Napa and they cut compression hoses for me about two foot in length, and I cut them the proper size. They're compression hoses, and AutoZone and I guess Discount Auto don't cover those. So go to someplace like Napa. The 2 foot section only cost me $5, which is a good deal. I didn't bother replacing the top hose. It was in good shape, and I could always replace it later if I need to. It's one of the easier hoses to replace. Okay. Now, when you remove those two transmission lines down there, let me see if I can get a better light on here. See those two lines with the two clips? Transmission fluid's going to leak out probably about, I don't know, half a cup, maybe even less. So you're going to have to replace some transmission fluid after you're done with all this process. Okay. The thermostat doesn't come with a gasket, so if you want to do the right job, you want to replace the gasket. The gasket costs like $2. The thermostat itself costs about $7, and the part is right here by the air filter. There's two screws. You take it out, and the gasket goes around the new thermostat. I kind of did that. That was one of my first steps I did. Is I took that hose off after I drained it and replaced that thermostat the first thing. I got all my parts from Rock Auto except for maybe the hoses I got from Discount Auto. Rock Auto has really good prices. The radiator cost $83. The thermostat costs like $8, and the radiator switch costs like $8. Hoses were comparable to local prices, so I just got the hoses locally. Okay, now when you go to replace the fluid in this, there's an issue. You fill it up as much as you can with the cap off. You run the car for about 5 minutes. It really doesn't move the chemicals because it's not pressurized. But, you know, fill it as much as you can with the cap off for about 5 minutes running. And then after about 5 minutes, put the cap on, let it run for another 5 minutes, and then shut the engine off and fill it up again. You might want to even look at the gauge inside the car because there is air in the system. And what I had an issue with was after I filled it up and thought it was filled, it really wasn't, and the gauge kept saying going to super hot. So check that gauge while you're running the heat and filling up the radiator here. Also, there's the filler reserve tank here. Make sure you fill it up to the full line on there. You have it. I don't know what it's actually for, but it seems to suck fluid out of there, and you're going to want to use it. Now, in a lot of these instructions, they say to turn the heat on and run the engine. That's fine and good, but the fans wouldn't turn on in that mode. I guess because it wasn't hot enough or whatever, but the fans wouldn't turn on. If you want to make sure the fans work, put the air conditioner on, run the engine, and you'll see the fans start turning on their own. Mine never really got to that point where it needed to turn the fans on. I was a little worried about it, but it wound up being the coolant in the radiator instead at the time. Radiator is pretty simple to change. All the other guys show you how to do it. There's basically three wires, one here on the left and two on the right that you have to remove. One of them, the gray wire on the right, I couldn't get the connector off, so I took the connector off the fan assembly instead. It was a lot easier after I got the hoses and things off. I also removed the hoses from the top instead of the bottom. It was a lot easier. So like on those hoses down there, I took it off those clamps and not the ones on the bottom that were connected to the radiator. I did the same for the bottom hose here, and then on the top hose I just removed it from the front. So it made it a lot easier to install that way. I did take the fans off because it was easier for me. Now, I had an issue after I'd done all this. I accidentally, in my rush, hurt the radiator itself. I had this fan shroud here, and I pretty much pushed it against the radiator ever so slightly. And there's a couple of dents in the radiator I thought I was going to get away with not worrying about it leaking, but it leaked. I'm not about to do this whole thing over again. I could for another $83 for a radiator and do it again and replace the fluid, but instead I went and got this. I got the bars leak stop, radiator stop leak. And they come in little tablets like that. I actually crushed the tablets up in a cardboard box and then I put them in. I took two because mine only took 1.6 gallons. And you're supposed to use 2 per gallon. I figured the least amount, the better. So I put 2 of those tablets in the radiator, ran it for 15 minutes. I actually drove it for 15 minutes and the leak stopped. I mean, granted, yeah, people complain about bars and online. Some people, they're out of probably tens of thousands of people that use that bar stuff. I've never heard that many complaints. Online there might be 1 or 2. So you got to wonder if they actually ever use the product or just complain about it. On the back there's instructions, and basically it says to maintain it, put a tablet in every 15,000 miles. And that sounds like a pretty good idea. I mean, I'll probably put one in every 15,000 miles, maybe 20,000 miles. And I'll keep an eye on that. If that thing starts leaking again, yeah, I'll replace it. I'll replace that radiator. But the old radiator was all rusted inside. I had it changed 2 years ago, and the fluid turned brown, so it was rusted. And I refused to put the bars in the rusted radiator. Instead, I got this new radiator. I flushed it all out with water before I've done it. I flushed it twice actually with some distilled water, and then I went and put the bars tablets in there, and it stopped the leak. There's no leak at all down there. I cleaned it, and it looks really good. So we'll keep an eye on that. But those are the things I think you should worry about when you're doing a radiator change out. It's not as simple as it looks. So be prepared to work on it 3 or 4 hours if you're not used to doing it.